To be successful in the hyper-connected environment, one of the first things that sales professionals have to wrap their heads around is what I call the sales matrix. And I call it the sales matrix as opposed to the sales funnel or the sales pipeline, because those ideas are all about a linear progression, right? There's step A, then step B, then step C, etc. The sales matrix is really about describing a contextual environment where there's multiple influences on the decision-making process. There might be multiple decision makers, and each of those has access to many pieces of information that can even change over the course of the sales conversation. And so instead of thinking that we're going to walk our customers through this very simple, linear, step-by-step progression, we have to be open to the fact that A, they have a lot of information already, and B, we have to acknowledge that information, acknowledge the fact that they can get all of this different material at any given time from all these different sources. And instead of ignoring that, we have to acknowledge it and actually use it as part of the decision-making process. We're still moving the relationship forward, hopefully, right? And still moving towards a sale. We're not just there to be an unpaid consultant, but we have to acknowledge those other sources of influence, or else we just look foolish. One of the main reasons that financial professionals have to rethink the linear process is because they were steeped in a linear process. It's kind of a hallmark of the financial profession that you go from step A to step B to step C. You're talking about money, you're talking about numbers. It would seem to make sense, but the reality is it made sense to have a linear process when you went to sit down with a customer, let's say a couple, and they've never thought about their finances before. So you can go through a very basic discovery process with them. They don't necessarily have a lot of information about, financial products. So the ones that you recommended, you could control that conversation a lot more. Financial professionals have to accept they don't have control anymore. And that's a scary thing for them. It's a scary thing for people. But if we can embrace that and go, hey, my job is not to control this conversation, but my job is to be the guide for that prospect along their own journey, we can then realize that, hey, even if some information comes in from another source, maybe even halfway through the process, instead of pushing that away, we can embrace it and say, well, how do we use that? How do we help the customer actually understand what that means and continue the process forward? Does the loss of the linear nature of the sales process lead to chaos? No. And the reason why is because there is still form to the process, and there's still an end goal. One of the metaphors I often use for this is improv comedy. Now, improv comedy, by its nature, has no script. It has no form. But there's still a purpose. There's still a reason the actors are on the stage. And there's rules that actually govern how those actors engage with each other. And in the same way, the sales matrix describes a process where there is still forward momentum. There is still a goal. There is still a reason why you're having a conversation with a prospect. But at the same time, you're acknowledging that there's going to be variables. You're acknowledging that you don't have all of the information necessarily, that you don't have the control. And again, you're working as a true partner with the prospect, with the customer, to move along that journey together. When you're looking to translate the old linear sales processes into the future, into this hyper-connected world, one of the ways of looking at it is what I call beats. And so instead of looking at each step in the sales process as a finite point, what you're actually looking at is a beat that must be hit in the conversation, in the relationship. So for example, establishing rapport is often considered the beginning of the sales engagement, of the sales process. You still have that in the sales matrix, but instead of it just being, I have to ask 2 minutes worth of questions and get to know the person and then we can move on, it's actually staying there, having that real conversation with somebody, truly establishing that foundation. And then when you understand contextually that you can move forward, you do. And by the way, you might actually not even need that step if it's somebody that you've known through your network for 5 years, right? You wouldn't sit there and have a 2-minute conversation about establishing rapport. You just move forward. And so it's understanding that there's going to be a lot that can happen at that beat. And once it's taken care of, once you can check the box about that, then you can move forward. But then when you go into, for example, value building, right? It's not just about, hey, let me tell you about the 10 things that are great about our product. the 7 reasons why our service is loved by everybody. It's, what do you know about our product and service? What's important to you in this area? You know, what questions do you have? What are the challenges that you're running into? And having a real conversation there, and then only after truly understanding what the customer thinks and feels and wants, then bringing in your information, right? And then it's, again, having that conversation until you can go, yes, they get it, we're on the same page, then we can move forward. So again, you still have this forward momentum, but you're looking to, again, hit these beats as you're going along, as opposed to just checking a box and that's it.